Welcome everyone to the Big Brain gameplay lecture series on terrorism as we play XCOM 2. Today, on today's video, we are going to be talking about nationalism, how it's used by terrorists and rogue states, and endemic terrorism, which is something completely different but sometimes confused for nationalism. So join us, won't you, on the Big Brain, and let's get our class handed to us. We have to start somewhere. I guess we can make contact with them. It's just not vital to go do that mission yet. Oh, good. No, we actually made contact this time, which is great. Guys. Okay. Shut up. Shut up. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Stop it. Stop it.
That problem comes along, you must zip it.
Troops are ready for a tough fight before we send them out there.
So where do we start? Today's about nationalism and endemic terrorism. But first we have to kind of define what nationalism is, right? I guess the best way to kind of understand what nationalism is to understand what nationalism isn't. What nationalism isn't is patriotism, all right? And there's this sense recently amongst peoples all throughout various countries that nationalism is a good thing, and it's confused for patriotism, in the sense that, it's, oh, aren't you a patriot, right? Don't you love your country, and don't you fly that flag, and you don't disrespect my flag, and you respect our troops, and all that, right? Generally, when those types of people, and you probably know who I'm talking about, speak of patriotism, they're actually speaking of nationalism. And nationalism is not patriotism, all right? Patriotism can best be defined as a pride or support for one's country, right? And more so than just pride or the showing of support, but also the willingness to actually contribute, sacrifice, defend one's country. Whereas nationalism is, again, represented as that, I'm proud of my country, and it's the best country in the world, and our country comes before all others. It's the love and pride of your nation to the exclusion of all others, right? Everything else is bad. Everything else is worse. That nationalism, to the exclusion of all others, can inspire terrorism, right? Much like we talked about last week with regards to separatism, right? It's that usually that nationalist fervor that drives people to want to separate from, a ruling nation. But it can also be used as a tool for terrorist organizations in order to recruit people that may not necessarily agree with the particular ideal that terrorist group supports. Could nationalism lead to military coups? Absolutely it can. Especially in authoritarian regimes, primarily, that's usually how power changes hands. Nationalism was one of the driving motivations behind the January 6th insurrection, the riot at the Capitol in America. That was nationalist sentiments that drove that primarily, okay? Because the fear was that, the Biden administration is going to welcome immigrants, and that he's going to work with other countries, and America first, and make America great again. That's nationalist rhetoric, is what that is. And even Donald Trump himself stated that he is a proud nationalist. And I believe him.
Thank you.
Let me give you an example that those in my class will be familiar with because it's in our book. And I'm sure everybody here may have at least know of the country Turkey. If you don't, the public education system has failed you. However, nationalism is actually in the game, specifically the Advent, that is very nationalist. It's you need to, we are the only authority, and we are the best, and we are here to make you better, and screw all your other cultures that you had. This is the one culture. In the real world, however, I want to give a real example. Turkey is an interesting country because it's always kind of been at the heart of a lot of modern conflicts. Oh, I'm just going to need to murder these people, aren't I? Fire team gods, please allow Arena to hit this shot. You fucking do it. Turkey is a interesting country because it's actually a Muslim majority country, and actually the first Muslim majority country to recognize Israel as a state, which is an interesting turn of events. Just remove this person, please, Guile. So when it comes to Turkey, though, it's part of the EU, but it also has kind of like one foot in the Arab world. Well, Turkey is also situated on kind of a border of a nationalist, of a nation of peoples known as the Kurds. And the Kurds are, should say, a minority population that are a nation of peoples with a shared ideology, ethnicity, and culture without a state of their own. They live on the border of 3 separate states. The southern Turkey, northern Iraq, and northern Iran. All right, so it's Iraq, Iran, and Turkey are the 3 states that they live on. And for quite some time, they're persecuted by all 3 of those countries, essentially. When it comes to the Kurds, they, again, have that shared identity. Well, there is a group, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, that tries to use that nationalist identity for their own purposes. The Kurdistan Workers' Party is a extremist Marxist group. And we're talking extremist Marxist kind of like Mao Zedong was extremist Marxist, right? Like willing to murder large swaths of people in order to get their way. Well, they don't actually receive a lot of support amongst the Kurdish people, even though they call themselves the Kurdistan Workers' Party, right? So what the Kurdistan Workers' Party did is, because they realized that they don't have a lot of support amongst Kurds, they actually started using nationalist rhetoric to start recruiting. Oh, good. Oh, son of a bitch. I feel like it's only these 3, so I feel like we're okay. And we're going to launch our grenades to remove some of these barriers here, and hopefully damage that guy. The Kurdistan Workers' Party used nationalist phrasing in order to garner support. Oh, you could probably take this person out. Boom! So before I squeeze this trigger, the nationalism rhetoric can garner support, but it only goes so far. Because if the particular people that you're advertising to aren't as extremist nationalist as you need them to be to push the violence, again, there's that decision that people who are considering terrorism have to make. Are they willing to use violence? And then every time an attack happens, they need to remake that decision. With regards to the Kurdistan Workers' Party, they got so violent that they actually pushed the rest of the Kurds away from them. They started losing support because they're like, we're not into this, which forced the Kurdistan Workers' Party to actually change its message. And we're going to change our message here with a bullet. Hell, you disappoint me. There's no reason that I can't take this guy out like right now, especially her with her shotgun. Like 67% chance. Oh, fuck me. You went, like, through shit? That's fucking shit, is what that is. Kyle, please take this guy out. Oh, thank you. Wow. This was a hell of a shot. Nationalism can be used, but not... Oh, he's just gonna... Unconscious. Okay, not dead. Not dead. But then this thing's gonna explode and it's gonna kill my guy. God damn it, I'm an idiot. Ooh, look at Kyle, just taking pot shots. I don't know what that was about. Oh, he panicked. That's what it was, because we lost a guy. That's nationalism. I think we're going to start endemic terrorism in a second, because I want to finish this goddamn fight. Because endemic terrorism requires a little bit of explanation. Blast him. Noise. He's out in the open. We have an 8. Yeah, we increased. Stop it. What the fuck is that shit? Irina, do me a favor and just remove him from the battlefield, please. Oh, really? Only 3 damage. Great. Great. That's great. So endemic terrorism, because I guess this fight is just going to continue to last. Endemic terrorism is very different from nationalist terrorism. It sometimes gets confused, though, because it does kind of result from the same situation in which a country is kind of imposing its will upon a group of peoples. But the difference with nationalism, where it results from like just one group feeling pressured, endemic terrorism results when you have multiple groups of people jammed together arbitrarily. Is he gonna run finally? Yeah, he is. Word. I'm fine. I'm fine with him running, because I can't beat him. No, stop it! God damn it. Oh, good. We won, but we lost a guy. Is there a term for government-enforced nationalism like North Korea? A totalitarianism, where the government basically wants to control every aspect of your daily life, right? Believe that your leader is a god emperor, an immortal god emperor. The state-controlled media believe what these say, not the evidence of your eyes and ears. Totalitarianism is what that is called. However, when it's a government doing it, it's nationalism, fascism, totalitarianism. There's a couple words for it, but that was a good question. Back to endemic terrorism, which the title of the stream, Colonialism, Loving Them Arbitrary Borders. The best example I can... endemic terrorism, the definition of it. Endemic terrorism refers to the artificial mixing of rival ethnic groups, tribes, nationalities, or cultures in one nation-state. Imagine that you are a large empire, and you come across a large tract of land of which there are no civilized humans living on. What do? Well, you say, this land is a fine land, and we shall call it a name, because they just pick a name for it. They say, this is ours now, and we shall own this much of the land, and they draw lines around all the land that they own. And they go to the peoples, who all look the same to them, and all worship the same pagan gods and to them. And they go, you are now Nigerians. And that's essentially where endemic problems start. And I said Nigeria specifically because Nigeria is one of the prime examples of endemic terrorism. Nigeria consists of different religions, cultural, tribal, and extended family groups. They speak a multitude of languages and have varied traditions. There is no history of common tradition in Nigeria. It is a state composed of separate religions and cultures constructed from British imperial decisions. It's the Advent coming in and saying, you all look alike. You're all vaguely hairy and ape-like, and you talk funny.
Check out the fresh nugs. Wheezing the juice. Ow! Buddy. Check out my cat.
Oh, God, you got him talking like you now.
Different from us, so you must be the same. So we are going to jam you in all together, and you are all going to be one peoples. Ignoring the multitude of different cultures within the world, the Advent's like, no, you're all just humanity now. But there are still differing cultures, values, religions, ethnicities that have kind of conflicts that have persisted for a while, and now you're going to say, no, you have to get along? No, those conflicts are going to continue to persist. But the problem is now you've given them a stake that's worthwhile to pursue, and that is leadership of the country, because whoever leads this arbitrary piece of ground that, the rich white folk have told us about exists now, well, we can then impose our will upon our mortal enemies. And that's how endemic terrorism pops up. The last thing that I kind of want to mention while we search for the black market is how both of these have been used by... God, you keep interrupting me, and I don't appreciate it. Nationalism can also be used by nations to impose its will upon groups of people. And the biggest example of that is China exercising its nationalist will over the Uyghur people, who are a minority group of Muslims in the northwestern region of China. But they exist, and they are very different, or at least they have their own culture, they have their own national belief or national ideal, and different from China. But China, being kind of the authoritarian state that it is, says, no, you are Chinese, and uses that to rally and excuse the persecution of an entire group of peoples. Now, China... So XCOM itself would not count as endemic terrorism, as they are one united group. No. XCOM itself would likely be considered... If you want to give it a title, there is some nationalism there, because it's the nationalist identity of being human. But there's also, it's separatist terrorism, because we want to, self-govern. However, in Fall of the Chosen, which I chose not to apply to this game, there is some endemic problems that you have to deal with in the game, which is really, really interesting, because you have to meet with rival resistances that have their own issues with each other, and there are endemic issues that pop up. But back to China. The authoritarian regime that is China uses nationalism to excuse a lot of the atrocities that it pulls on the Uyghur people. But it also claims that the Uyghur people are nationalist terrorists themselves. And they do that for one specific reason, and that is to try to, one, cover their crimes, but two, to get support from Western nations who have been on a war against terror for the past 20 years. When it comes to nationalism and endemic terrorism, they can be, sometimes related to each other, and sometimes endemic terrorism does stem from nationalism, but they are two distinct separate things. Nationalism is a national identity that can be an ethnic, religious, cultural, racial, to the exclusion of all other ethnicities, races, religions, creeds, and all that. Whereas endemic terrorism results from the arbitrary drawing of borders around multiple different national identities who have their own problems with each other. And usually when you see nationalist terrorism, it works upwards because it's always trying to fight against the group that's persecuting them. Whereas endemic terrorism, it's usually lateral. It's the groups infighting with each other. And that's nationalist and endemic terrorism. If you like this sort of in-depth discussion, why don't you subscribe, leave a comment, and make sure that you turn on notifications so that you never miss an episode that drops every week. We record these Big Brain gameplay lectures over at twitch.tv/FPScra every Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so please come and join us. I have been your Professor FP Escra. Class dismissed.